Time is your most important resource. You can do so much in 10 minutes. 10 minutes, once gone, is gone for good. A little boy, not yet 5 years old, pedals a small bicycle through the streets of Småland, Sweden. But play is not on his mind. Patiently, he navigates the town streets, selling matches to anyone interested. 100 boxes of matches brought all the way from Stockholm. Gradually, he expands his product range, reselling flowers, Christmas cards, pencils, and dreams of growing his small business. Today, his company's store openings attract crazy queues, and the design of their products is copied by nearly everyone. A company whose profits grow as if it were dealing in oil, not furniture. Have you guessed who and what we are talking about? Ingvar Kamprad. His initials mark the beginning of the legendary IKEA, one of the most well-known and beloved retail chains for furniture and home goods. A company that sells nearly $45 billion worth of products worldwide each year. That's even more than Coca-Cola, Xiaomi or McDonald's. Their furniture isn't just popular with real people, but also with movie characters and video game heroes. And the company's marketing strategies received the highest awards and praise. But how did the founder of IKEA, who admired Hitler and struggled with alcoholism, manage to become one of the richest people in the world? And how did a store with a revolutionary idea come into existence in a provincial Swedish town, changing the lives of hundreds of millions of people all over the planet? This is the story of IKEA. A Swede with German roots. It all begins in the chilly Swedish town of Småland with a population of 5,000. On March 30, 1926, the future billionaire Ingvar Kamprad was born there. He spent most of his childhood on the Elm Turret farm under the care of his father and German grandmother. It was his grandmother's upbringing that instilled in him essential knowledge about trade and political views, but more on that later. In 1931, he accompanied his father to a small store. He overheard his father negotiating about matchboxes. His father simply said the price for a box of matches, 5 öre, a Swedish krona coin, was unreasonably high in this store and cheaper in the capital. However, the store's response was simply, if you don't like it, leave. Perhaps anyone else would have let this pass, but not our hero. When he got home, he noticed a large package of matches in a mail order catalog, containing 100 boxes for 88 öre. It was at that moment that the very idea of buying something cheaper and then selling it for a profit filled him with excitement. Upon receiving the parcel, he began selling each box for 2-3 öre, eventually making his first profit of nearly 300 öre. Following his success with matches, he delved into trading postcards, wall maps, and self-caught fish. By the age of 11, he had built a small business selling seeds. By that time, he had saved up 90 kroner, nearly $11, which was a significant sum at the time. With this money, he purchased a new bicycle and a used typewriter, equivalent to getting a moped and a laptop today. In the late 1930s, high school student Ingvar decided it was time to embark on something more substantial. He was drawn to ballpoint pens, which were quite scarce in Sweden at the time. They were a novel invention priced too high at around $7 each. Ingvar took out his first ever bank loan, $63, borrowed $11 from his father, pooled all his savings and ordered 500 pens from Paris. The resourceful young man even conducted a product presentation and promised a cup of coffee and a pastry to anyone who attended. Since there were more than 1,000 attendees, Ingvar ended up spending more on refreshments than he had initially anticipated earning from the first batch of pens. Nevertheless, this was the beginning. Ballpoint pens turned out to be in demand, marking yet another step towards his dream. The birth of IKEA. Ingvar Kamprad's cooperation with the company from which he purchased pens continued. He personally traveled by train to different cities, selling his products in shops and stores. Soon, the company's management asked him to make an official contract with them, but they could only do so if Ingvar's business had legal status. So in 1943, at the age of 17, he officially registered his own company for $2 and named it IKEA. Many found the name of the company strange, but in reality, it was quite simple. He took the initials of his first name and last name, I and K, and added to them the initials of the names of the farm he grew up on and the nearest village, E from Elmtared and A from Agunnaryd. The company's logo has changed many times throughout its history until it finally settled on a yellow and blue color scheme, the colors of Sweden's national flag. When Ingvar enrolled in a commercial school in Gothenburg, he learned a lot about business, including the idea that to become a good businessman, you needed to solve the problem of delivering products from the manufacturer to the customer in the simplest and cheapest way. It was around this time that the promising goods by mail scheme began gaining popularity. You would place an ad for a product in the newspaper, wait for a call or a letter from a buyer, and then send the order by mail. His company embarked on this adventure. During the day, the business owner attended school, and in the evenings, together with his entire family, he packed women's wallets and incredibly popular nylon stockings into postal boxes. Kamprad bought items in bulk and resold them, including wristwatches, jewelry, photo frames, stationery, belts, and Swiss lighters. He even purchased a milk truck and personally delivered packages to the nearest post office. In 1945, Ingvar was accepted into the Association of Forest Owners, and these associates needed saws. A lot of saws. The budding entrepreneur bought them for 65 kroner each and sold them for 90. And when he went into the army the following year, he persuaded the colonel to grant him additional leaves at night, rented an office, and soon received more mail than the colonel himself. One day, Kamprad found an advertisement from an Austrian businessman and arranged with him to buy pans for only 2.5 kroner each. Ingvar realized that he could profitably sell them by mail for 3.95 kroner. He received nearly 500 orders and collected the money before traveling to Austria. However, the Austrian cheated him, saying, "Sorry, I made a mistake with your kroner. I'm ready to sell the pans for only 4 kroner each, no less." What did Kamprad do? The Swedes have a concept of reputation, and Ingvar honestly tried to save his. He bought 200 pans for 4 kroner each and sold them for 3.95, incurring a loss himself. So in 1948, Ingvar felt that with his relatively modest working capital, he was struggling to compete in this market. To strengthen his position, he decided to expand his assortment and trade by mail furniture. Furthermore, he was eager to outperform his main competitor, Guimar's Fabriker, who also traded in similar products to IKEA. IKEA News. Like all startups, the company faced financial difficulties at the beginning. It was crucial to find an advantage over competitors that would allow them to gain more customers and profits. Here, IKEA benefited from the company's founder, who was naturally very careful with money, almost to the point of being too tight, and also really smart in business. To sell at a lower price than competitors, Ingvar made agreements with very small manufacturers who would depend on his purchases and wouldn't be able to dictate prices. The first trial product for sale was an armless chair called Rook. Yes, you heard that right. Indeed, Kamprad gave names to each item because he had struggled with dyslexia from a very young age and had difficulty remembering numbers. There were no inventory numbers on IKEA products. These were not necessarily real words. The peculiarity of these names gave rise to a joke that IKEA kept an alien monster, and when they needed to name a furniture series, they turned to it for help. The monster would mumble something in its language and people would write it down. That's how Fjällbo, Along, and Kvarnvik were born. Let's get back to chairs. He placed an advertisement in a newspaper with a circulation of 285,000 copies, and it received an overwhelming response. A huge number of those test chairs suddenly sold. He was convinced of the effectiveness of this advertising. In early 1950, he decided to create his own brochure, IKEA News, which featured the entire range of the company's products. Ingvar began selling other products such as coffee table, a sofa bed, and a crystal lamp. They were quickly snapped up as well. The efforts of Kamprad and the help of his family were no longer sufficient, and he hired his first employee, an accountant. Within a year, the number of employees increased to 8. The main furniture customers were the rural middle class, who were accustomed to counting every kroner. So Kamprad quickly came up with another rule that became fundamental for IKEA. It's more profitable to sell 600 cheap chairs than 60 expensive ones. The IKEA Effect. In the spring of 1952, a man who would become a key figure for the company, Sven Hansson, joined IKEA. He was the generator of IKEA's boldest ideas and proposed to Kamprad to open his own store and display furniture in it. An old carpentry workshop building in Älmhult cost a fortune for the business at the time, $75,000. To achieve this, in 1952, Ingvar announced that he would start selling only furniture and sold off the remaining stock of all other goods. In March 1953, he sent out the first catalog dedicated exclusively to furniture. In it, people were invited to come to the showroom, see the furniture in an interior setting, touch it with their hands, but still order it by mail. An unexpected line of 2,000 people formed for the opening of the showroom. Kamprad was worried that the floor might collapse under such a number of people, or even worse, that there wouldn't be enough buns for everyone. It would be terrible because they had promised coffee and buns to everyone who came to the opening. However, the floor held and the buns were baked very quickly. By the way, the cafe inside the store still brings in substantial revenue for IKEA. Later, Ingvar promised a free lunch and a discount on a railway ticket to anyone who came for furniture at his first store. Soon IKEA became another tourist attraction in Älmhult, surpassing even the fame of the town as the birthplace of the famous naturalist Carl Linnaeus. But interestingly, back then, they would send already assembled pieces of furniture to customers, which of course didn't make delivery easy. Typically, the items would arrive with some defects. By pure chance, Kamprad noticed that one of his designers, Gilles Lundgren, who had struggled with transporting furniture from one shooting location to another, was unscrewing the legs of a table to make it fit into the car. It was this, in Ingvar's mind, that gave birth to the idea of furniture packed in flat boxes. The first flat-pack table, Max, was offered in the 1953 catalog, and by 1956 they could boast a wide range of flat-pack furniture. It took up less space, saved labor for the workers, and reduced customer delivery costs because they could bring the packaging home themselves. This encouraged him to convert his stores to a store warehouse format, similar to existing supermarkets like cash and carry. Thanks to this, 500,000 catalogs were sent out that year, and 6 million products were sold. Equally revolutionary was the idea of offering customers furniture to assemble themselves, having only the necessary Allen key. First, for IKEA, the assembly cost was reduced to zero. Moreover, without realizing it, Ingvar discovered an important psychological feature of people, which scientists would later call the IKEA Effect. The more effort required by the customer to obtain a particular product or service, the more valuable they appear. Expanding into reality. In the 1950s, Sweden saw the closure of around 50,000 farms, and this number doubled in the following decade. As a result, suburbs began to grow, and housing programs were rapidly evolving. All of this helped IKEA to expand rapidly and open new stores. One common feature of these stores was that they were always located in outlying areas. As Kamprad himself acknowledged, the reason for this was the low cost of rent. However, this didn't deter customers, and it was worth it. By 1959, IKEA's revenue amounted to $9.5 million. Worried about IKEA's pushiness and low prices, competitors began to act. They didn't allow Kamprad to enter furniture exhibitions, published negative articles in the press, prohibited writing prices on furniture at fairs, and most unpleasantly, managed to boycott IKEA by many Swedish suppliers. The remaining loyal suppliers sometimes sent IKEA goods overnight in trucks without their company logos. In 1957, the Swedish Free Trade Council got involved in this matter because by then, IKEA had impressive turnovers, and everyone wanted to collaborate with them, regardless of the consequences. In 1961, to meet customer orders, the company needed to supply 40,000 chairs. All of Sweden's manufacturers could only fulfill half of this number, and IKEA began searching for manufacturers outside the country. Poland proved to be an excellent choice with its quality work and lower labor costs. Today, Poland hosts state-of-the-art factories that produce up to 5,000 chairs a day, with a significant portion going to IKEA. In 1963, IKEA made its first international expansion by opening a store in Norway. In 1965, another important step in the company's development occurred. IKEA opened its largest store in Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. The building covered 45,800 square meters over 4 floors, with a separate storage area for products. It cost the company $2.1 million, but it was a key project in transforming IKEA into a modern empire. The store not only featured an expanded range of furniture, but also new home decor items and household products. At the opening, 28,000 people attended, and over time, people from all over the world came here. From the late 1960s, IKEA began to dominate in major European countries, North America, Australia, and opened stores in places like Singapore, the Canary Islands, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Japan, Russia, and China. They produced their furniture hits: the Billy bookshelf, Clip-on sofa, Poyang armchair, and Lock coffee table, which according to IKEA drove everyone crazy. In the 1970s, due to a defective billboard, the building of the very first IKEA store in Stockholm caught fire, and the department store closed for reconstruction for 6 months. But before halting operations, the management decided to sell all the goods from the warehouse at a discount, including the fire-damaged and smoke-filled items. 8,000 customers flocked here and formed a half-kilometer line. Many even spent the night in tents next to the store to be among the first to shop. By the next day, the line stretched for 5 kilometers, and the store's shelves emptied at an unprecedented speed. After the fire, Trygg-Hansa Insurance Company paid compensation of $3 million, which became the largest insurance loss in Sweden's history. In 1982, Ingvar Kamprad, in collaboration with lawyers, developed a scheme aimed at protecting the company from external threats and excessive taxation. He established and headed the Stichting Inga Foundation, which now owns all the shares of the corporation. He also created the organization Intra-IKEA Systems, which owns the trademark and concept. It was led by one of the most trusted individuals in the Kamprad family, Per Ludvigsson, who in the event of Kamprad's departure or death would have the final say. Ingvar structured the management in such a way that not even his sons, when they became owners of IKEA, would be able to sell any of its organizations or extract money from circulation and dispose of it at their discretion. However, this clever scheme remains undisclosed, allowing the corporation not only to remain intact, but also to stay within the ownership of a single family. In 1990, IKEA acquired its own sawmills and factories, laying the foundation for Swede, a successful industrial group within IKEA. In 1997, they created their first website, where customers could explore the product catalog, and 3 years later, they launched an online store, significantly boosting sales. By the evening of the 21st century, IKEA employed over 60,000 people. The IKEA catalog, with nearly 110 million copies in circulation, became an irresistible temptation for more than 300 million people who collectively spend nearly $12 billion on Swedish products each year. Follies of youth. Ingvar Kamprad was indeed known for being very careful with money, which some people saw as being too cheap or even greedy. Stories circulated about him driving an old Volvo from the early 1990s until his death, using a 32-year-old chair in his office, and being denied access to the Swedish Businessman of the Year award ceremony because he arrived on a regular bus. In 1973, Kamprad left Sweden for Switzerland to avoid high taxes, including a wealth tax. However, after 40 years, when he decided to return to his homeland, he had to pay approximately $600,000 in taxes despite declaring an income of $1.7 million. His father and many partners noted that Kamprad was quite trusting. This was exemplified by the story of the pants he purchased for 4 Swedish kronas each. He also once invested in a company co-owned by IKEA to manufacture televisions, which led to a loss of $6.25 million due to the irresponsibility of a family member who was the director. Kamprad even contemplated a major project to build a wood processing plant in Siberia, Russia, leasing 100,000 hectares of forest for 99 years. This venture resulted in a loss of $15.5 million when the Soviet Union as a state ceased to exist. In his old age, Kamprad calculated that due to his personal actions, IKEA had lost around $250 million throughout its history. Although these numbers of millions were only a small fraction compared to IKEA's earnings, they could have translated into a $3,500 bonus for each of the company's 71,428 employees. Regarding his affiliation with the Swedish fascist movement, it was revealed in 1994 that Kamprad had been a member of the New Swedish Movement, a Nazi group, since 1942. He actively collected money for the group and recruited new members until at least September 1945. The exact time of Kamprad's departure from the group is unknown, but he remained friends with Per Engdahl until the early 1950s. Moreover, according to the State Security Service, he was a member of the Swedish Socialist Unity Party, a Nazi party. After these facts about Kamprad's Nazi past were made public, he expressed deep regret about that part of his life and considered it one of the biggest mistakes he had ever made. He later wrote a letter of apology to all IKEA employees of Jewish nationality. Nevertheless, in August 2010, in an interview, he stated, "Per Engdahl was a great man, and I will hold this opinion as long as I live." Whether Kamprad was truly stingy or had genuine regrets about his sympathies towards Hitler, we may never know. In 2018, at the age of 91, Ingvar Kamprad passed away, having achieved excellence in his business model and leaving behind an ongoing furniture empire. Here's idea, here's IKEA. In 2023, IKEA celebrated its 80th anniversary. It owns more than 470 stores worldwide, and the number of employees exceeds 135,000. For the first time, the company began opening retail stores in South American countries. The company's revenue amounted to $44.6 billion per year, with over $2 billion coming from the food zone of the stores. IKEA's product range comprises around 10,000 items, with furniture accounting for only 40% and the rest being home-related products. Even the plush toy Blahai, a blue shark, remains popular among people of all ages and has gained support with the LGBTQ+ community after IKEA released a series of commercials featuring the blue shark in support of same-sex marriages in Switzerland. Each year, the number of visitors to IKEA stores increases by a few percent, reaching 822 million people annually. The annual IKEA catalog is printed in 212 million copies in 29 languages worldwide. During the 2000s, at the peak of the company's popularity, IKEA catalogs outstripped the Harry Potter series and even the Bible in terms of circulation. Until 2020, IKEA purchased 17 million cubic meters of commercial timber per year, which represented 1% of all timber on the global market. The company tried to keep this enormous figure low-key, but a few years ago, IKEA stated that it would transition to more resource-efficient ways of making furniture. The company's charitable foundation, Stichting Inga Foundation, known from Kamprad's intricate scheme, has been considered the world's richest charitable organization since 2006, with assets reaching $36 billion annually. The main goal of the foundation is to promote and support innovations in the fields of architecture and interior design. However, many experts and journalists believe that IKEA uses the foundation to evade paying substantial taxes. The lifestyle created by IKEA has significantly simplified the lives of many people and has probably forever made it easier to spend nerves and money on buying furniture for the home. It transformed our homes from museums, where furniture was placed once and for all in a specific order, into places where we can make endless rearrangements and discover new designer solutions. Nevertheless, IKEA has made many apartments look similar with the presence of the same furniture. Despite IKEA being called the best company in its field, Ingvar Kamprad always disagreed with this notion. Every person and every company has room to grow, and IKEA is no exception. What IKEA products do you have in your home? Share in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue to delight you with great content.